Hi everybody, B. Squigglehausen here, and welcome back to Gramercy. I know it's been a long time. I'd like to thank you guys all for being patient. I've actually had an incredibly busy time, and well, you're going to see quite a lot here in this episode of Gramercy. I'm really excited. So we're getting started with actually expansion, which is a little almost unusual. I've kind of been focusing on areas much closer to what I've already built. So we're expanding now and finally getting rid of this kind of temporary highway connection by the edge. So I wanted to do something interesting here with the lower streets. So this kind of double-decker network has been serving pretty well. It's got the two separate one-way roads kind of serving as an avenue directly under the freeway. So I wanted to kind of add a U-turn sort of area underneath, because I imagine underneath is going to be parking. I haven't actually placed any parking or anything down. I think it's just surface painted right now, because I didn't want to really kind of get in. And the highway's so low, you never ever see it anyway. At least not, of course, until we might get a cinematic camera that can allow us to use the first person. So I'm not super concerned. But anyway, you saw me using a little bit of Move It to try to get everything in place. And now I imagine this avenue kind of sweeping up and paralleling the highway there, just because I like the kind of combination of avenues that'll curve and connect. And I wanted to imagine this area, which is actually bordering our World's Fair Park, one of the kind of, I guess, as we kind of normally see Gramercy, westernmost, but I think it's actually southernmost sections of the park. So it really needed to look, to me at least, majorly revamped to be road-centric and everything. So the big highway curving up and sweeping around and having these large avenues really worked. It's very Robert Moses-esque in my mind. In fact, maybe not quite Robert Moses-esque, since I didn't plow it through some minority neighborhood. But anyway. So you can see right now I'm really kind of focusing and honestly struggling a little bit trying to tweak these avenues to have the connection look good. It was a little tricky, and I'm kind of not 100% happy with the way it turns out, but as you'll hear later, I do get a chance to change this. So this was cool. I actually got the longest sort of exit I've ever seen in City Skylines, the longest intersection thing. But unfortunately it just didn't quite work out, because if it was all super long and arrow straight and required a super sharp curve, I really wanted it to look like the highway just kind of naturally grew and added a lane around the corner, and that lane broke off. But of course that is always easier said than done in cities. So I ended up kind of really having to tweak and toggle it around, especially when it's elevated. So you'll see I destroy everything, even though I had this great intersection, which would have looked perfect almost anywhere else if it could have just been kept straight. But I curved this, and really takes a while to get it working, because when it's all straight it's all nice and good, but you end up with just too tight of a curve right at the end. It doesn't look smooth at all. So I really wanted it to look like it's all part of one elevated structure, rather than the extra lanes kind of peeling off and everything, at least until later. Just like they had one extra wide bridge and they put a line of concrete barriers down it. Rather than like two bridges adjacent to each other, which is how City Skylines works. And of course, in my forever hatred of actual my forever hatred of actual freeway exits, I continue this one off and turn it into a large one-way street. Go back to edit the off-ramp a little bit. But I turned it into a one-way street and actually curved that down into the city. I found that's a little more effective, at least from what I'm doing, than a regular diamond interchange, or God forbid a larger kind of more complicated interchange like a cloverleaf. Those just didn't really fit the theme, and I kind of like the uneven set of freeway exit ramps. It's actually a lot of fun to have like two that join in one place and one that kind of starts a couple blocks away. And it really, to me, makes it look like the highway was kind of built through the city rather than the city being built around the highway. And for me, that's actually kind of a big thing, because Gramercy, like of course its prototype in New York, was a big place before the highways came. It was a big kind of bustling city. In fact, I think Gramercy, in my headcanon, my mind for this, actually used to be a little bit bigger, and it's kind of shrunk during the 60s and shrunk around the time of the highways being built. But anyway, this left me with this kind of awkwardly shaped block in here, as usual. As highway projects usually leave. So using some inspiration from the area near Classen Avenue and the BQE exit down there, which is actually the part of New York City that this neighborhood most closely represents in real life too. I try to make this sort of weird parallel street thing, and unfortunately I needed to add too many intersections to make it work really nicely, but I ended up getting it to work. I had this big looping road here. I ended up squaring it off just a little bit, so kind of a curve and a straight. I don't quite know what I'm putting in here, but I'm like thinking it could be cool to have like a sanitation facility. I know it's not necessarily right on the water, which is where the barges would all go, but some sort of like parking lot, maybe a bus depot or something in there could be a lot of fun. On this side I actually went for a park, which is maybe unusual for the space, but I felt like saying, oh, excuse me, God. Oh, man, I'm sorry about that. It's almost midnight. I just really want to get this episode out to you guys. But anyway, going through, I actually de-zone a little bit of the area, bulldoze some of the buildings I have, and upgrade the road to kind of squeeze it all up and through. Because this is actually going to be the park. I expanded a little bit. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to make it go all the way to the the road there. But I do that, and then just to make it a little different, I cut a corner out, and that's actually going to be housing, maybe even a couple public housing towers, just right at the corner of the park. But end up squeezing that in, actually end up cutting off the power to the whole park. And then I start adding roads through the park, and this I was kind of reluctant to do. Just like didn't quite feel it, and I was like, man, like roads and parking all over. But in looking at, now of course we have moved from Brooklyn to BQE over to Queens and Flushing Corona Meadows. So this sort of park and everything, there are tons of roads going through there because there were service roads and everything during the World's Fair. And of course after that now they are used to help people get all around in this giant park. So man, I yawned once and now I'm yawning all over the place. But anyway, add a bunch of roads. Of course, I add a roundabout that gets completely screwed up, but thank God with Move It we can tweak it really back so it's actually round again rather than being some sort of egg about. But just kind of weave some roads in and through and try to figure out where I want to keep them, where I want to put them, the sort of loop that I want. These are just the skinny 2-lane roads, and then I add a little pedestrian path. Well, it's like the vehicle pedestrian path thing down very close to the edge of the water and grab the boat docks, the marinas that came with, I believe, After Dark. And here's actually where I get distracted with a new asset. I need to cut this out of the video because I actually build, yeah, anyway. That's a new asset that I downloaded. I just really want to see the scale because it came out and I was immediately thinking Gramercy downtown, it'll be perfect. And of course it will be. So that's going to not be my Empire State Building analog. So I'm not really building a Manhattan. But that probably will be one of the tallest buildings in downtown Gramercy, maybe edged out by like a tall new residential skyscraper or something, much like real life Brooklyn is now having all these crazy new skyscrapers. Anyway, I go, and of course terraforming means water problems and flooding and everything, because I really didn't want the docks to be 400 feet up in the air, whatever. But I ended up fixing that then. And actually, so we're just about to come up to a point that's a little kind of, not bittersweet, that's definitely the wrong word, but a little kind of frustrating, I guess. So pretty soon there'll be a short cut, and I'll actually go to a different day of recording. And unfortunately, on this day of recording, my saves, even though I save every about 45 minutes whenever I change a new clip, they didn't seem to actually save. I remember typing in saving Gramercy, I'm on like save 40 something. And the newest one I have is 39, which is really annoying. I searched all over my computer and just couldn't find it. So what we're about to see is lining up some blocks and starting off a couple blocks for this large neighborhood that we're about to build. I ended up adjusting the pattern here, connect it to the road with the monorail over it, and kind of start stretching stuff. And pretty soon you're going to start seeing things that didn't get saved. Actually, you know what? I think we have one more video clip before that. So I go through and I'm now changing up this highway. I had put it on the ground just for now, I guess, but that wasn't really doing it for me anymore, and I really wanted to come up with a more permanent sort of geometry at least. Obviously this is not going to be anywhere close to detailed, or at least I hope that you guys can tell. I hope that you trust me enough. But I wanted to follow the river and really do something kind of unique here. And by unique, I mean like a total ripoff of real life in Manhattan. And actually, this is originally going to be the edge of the BQE near Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is this, it's actually a quadruple level viaduct and everything. But I just didn't quite have the terrain height difference to be able to make that work. So it ended up becoming more like the FDR on the east side of Manhattan, but just a cool double-decker freeway. I need to come in and add custom pillars to all that, and of course like walls and exits and things. But I go for the double-decker elevated freeway across the river, and then drag in the freeway up to connect it. Just to kind of shake things up a little bit, I go for a little S-bend to kind of try to line things up a little better and to make it look like it kind of pushed aside a block. So I tried a few techniques and end up realizing I actually didn't bring the S-bend anywhere close to far enough. So a few measurements and guesstimates and things, trying to get this all looking good. I actually managed to figure out, I really wish I remember how to do this now, but I'm just watching it in time, so I'm like, man, that's a nice smooth S-bend. If only I could remember how I did that. But anyway, it's really kind of fun, so I dropped the highway down and underneath. So you get a cool like double-decker bridge, which I think is really cool. Really neat, I guess, trying to use different words, not just the same over and over again. But anyway, I'm not quite sure I'm going to detail this. I may look for or make or request like truss bridge side pieces so I can make it look like it's framed out like a truss bridge. Or even a drawbridge sort of thing. I know that double-decker drawbridges are really rare, but Chicago has a couple. And I mean, I don't quite know what to do. If any of you guys have suggestions, I'd appreciate it. The river, I'd like it to be tall enough to be like boat navigable, but it really doesn't have to be. The river leads up to a little pond, pretty unrealistically, and we'll see. It's pretty much just there to shape the terrain. But anyway, you see me kind of expanding this block area, and I'm trying to find the right balance between a grid and interesting, basically. So one of the things I always had a mind for in Gramercy and a desire to build are just kind of, I always look at Google Maps of New York and everything and just regular maps, and you see hundreds and hundreds of blocks, same size, same shape, maybe only a couple that have been broken through for parks and things. And I was just always really kind of amazed by the scale of the city that way. And you can just look out over just hundreds of blocks of rooftops. So I want to, Gramercy is definitely going to have a lot of those around, but of course it's super boring. So I grab a few like slight off angles, I cut some roads straight through, which is, it definitely adds a lot to the look. You actually see annoyingly Network Skins gave me the wrong light posts, which I fixed like 2 or 3 times without realizing that my saves weren't saving. So I still have to fix that again, but anyway, I'm going to catch myself back up to everything I've done off camera pretty soon, maybe even on stream. I don't really know. I've been pretty busy lately, but it's definitely something I need to do, obviously, because I made a lot of good decisions in this one and was really excited to continue. And just today, while I was recording the cinematics, realized that, oh my god, it's all gone. But anyway, all this stuff is still here. You start to see, there's just blocks on blocks on blocks, but I think there's at least hopefully enough slight diagonals and things that'll make this easy. Well, not make this easy, make this interesting, but enough blocks that'll make it easy to detail. That's another sort of fear of mine. As much as off angles and things are really fun to have, they are a huge pain, or at least can be a huge pain to represent and to get shaped right, especially the long, thin blocks, which in real life, great, somebody makes a long, thin building, a flat iron style deal, but in City Skylines, I just have to sit there and puzzle through, like, do I use that 145 degree angle building again? What did I figure it out? Okay, so now, actually, you can see right here, I changed my Roads United color, so I brighten up the highways, and brighten up kind of all the roads in general, because I realized that it was looking like the pavement was a little bit too fresh. And now is when I lose all that data, so I don't have that freeway interchange yet, but again, it's one of these things. I'm keeping all the video for this one extra long because I was really happy with the way it turned out, so I'm going to pretty much rebuild it exactly. So this section of the interchange I really liked because it was very, very compact and tight. while still kind of having fairly realistic slopes and things. This is one of my favorite parts, is the freeway exit actually doesn't just dump you out into a street. There's a way that you can go straight and kind of move onto a parallel street. That's going to get fixed up with Traffic Manager or Traffic++ or whatever the heck we're calling these mods nowadays, to allow us to have that all work nicely. I try here to make a slip lane just for fun, but unfortunately the angles and the slim roads just don't quite agree with each other, and I end up kind of abandoning that. And instead getting really busy with some asymmetrical roads, I guess. Here I'm going through and trying to figure out what to do, and of course pretty soon I realized that I'm not using the correct roads united either. So even though the colors and everything worked and you get the lighter highways, I'm not using the American textures. So pretty soon I'll go through and switch that. But now I'm kind of turning the main roads into 2-lane with the turning lane, and with the kind of hash marks across the middle, just to kind of shake things up. That's one of the neighborhoods I'm actually most happy with coming up right here. So again, it's yet another grid, and this is the one that I'm actually imagining that the highway was built to. So I tried to make it look like it was built inside this grid. This one's based on kind of the coastline, I guess. I dropped the highway to an elevated embankment here rather than elevated on a bridge or a structure. Just, again, kind of just get a different texture. And then I drop the avenue over here and add Ronix's great Katowice Bridge, which is Japanese and really, really cool. But I feel like it works well enough in Gramercy. I wish it was kind of an old school American truss drawbridge, but there's something about the arches that I actually really, really like too. Again, obviously this was kind of the idea. It was an older bridge. It's a little like Pittsburgh-y almost. So I mean, I was looking around. It's like a big steel-framed arch bridge is not unrealistic, and I think the only reason that you don't see more of them in New York is because the ships had to be so tall because there was just shipping everywhere. And of course, on this river in particular in Gramercy, not a lot of shipping up there. It's very shallow, and of course, just leads to a pond. So as we move on, I now, much to I'm sure Strict Toaster's delight, I start getting rid of a bunch of trees. This I do like 2 or 3 times because these saves don't work, and that I realized. And then I added a little bike loop, which I'm really happy with, and I'm going to try to remake almost identically. I doubt anybody will actually be biking on this, but just kind of adding it in the way it weaved around the park. I had a little flying bike interchange, which I thought was a lot of fun. And a lot of bike like ramps almost, so it was a little fun building like freeway style infrastructure but on a bike scale, and then a lot of little paths and cut-ins to try to let people access the bike path more easily, and then this weird little shape, just kind of a promenade sort of thing, get out to the edge of the coast. It's like an alternate entrance into the park as well. There's another 2-lane road that leads to a little roundabout, and we start cutting off the paths and things. And this I'm really happy with too. It's an elevated bridge, which is pretty obvious and easy to make. And now actually we're going to just jump into something else. But that elevated bridge just connects the park with a park across the street. And now we're actually moving into something that, if you're familiar with my streams, hopefully I hope, Jesus, the lateness is really, really wearing on me. But anyway, I hope you'd recognize this. This has been a project I've been working on for a while. I'd never done a steam locomotive before for City Skylines, and for a variety of reasons. One, I build modern cities. Most people build modern cities, and a steam locomotive isn't quite great for that. And also, it's a lot harder, and also you can't animate it. But when I was researching the World's Fair site and the World's Fair kind of, not props, what was at the World's Fair, the exhibits, it turns out that American railroads had an exhibit, and as did the New York Central Railroad and a whole bunch of other railroads and things like that, to show how awesome and high-tech they are. And the 1939 World's Fair actually featured one of these locomotives. In real life, it is a 462 Hudson belonging to the New York Central Railroad, streamlined to pull the 20th Century Limited. And I've loved this train pretty much forever, and ended up painstakingly making a model of it. The reference photos and things were not amazing online. Of course, when I look for reference photos, I really hope to get like nice orthographic drawings and things. Because all of these were scrapped, they're hard to come by. It's also hard to come by color or more modern pictures of them, just because they don't really exist. But anyway, so the modeling was all done a while ago, and so were the UV layouts, but the texturing was just kind of a really daunting task, and then I figured, you know what? I could actually throw this into an episode of Gramercy and show you guys kind of my texturing technique. So the first thing I did there was, you see me right now, and I'm finishing it up, but I'm blocking out all the colors. So this one's it's a little basic. It feels a little silly to be like, yeah, I spent a lot of time blocking out the colors, because it's literally just like the gray base coat for most of the train, a little bit of chrome and metal for the connecting rods, and some dark gray for the industrial pieces. And those are just like the underbody and everything. But it's a really useful tool just to kind of figure out the colors, figure out if you have enough detail actually on the model. I think I did. I think I didn't have to change anything, but I've had some other trains where I'm just like, you know what, maybe I need to add something, because it doesn't look quite right in the color blocking. But anyway, I start working on this, and once the colors are there, I really kind of find my groove. I add a couple layers here. I think this one is holes for the driving wheels, which are cool. So right now I'm probably tabbed out looking for templates and things, trying to figure out the actual technique for the driving wheels. So these are called Skylines drivers. They're double disc drivers, which means they're just made with some special process that makes them, I think, lighter but still strong, or maybe stronger and heavier. I don't quite know. But they're just super distinctive to me. They're like the equivalent of the telephone dial rims on like a 70s or 80s car. They just match the Art Deco look like impeccably. So real quick, I'm actually jumping into an old texture right now to grab the correct color for the window. So I found I did have good side reference, and I actually pull that up and use that here to make sure the window is correctly sized and shaped. And then I actually end up going a little bit freestyle on the window, because every like other picture of reference I found of this thing has completely different windows. Some of them have like a full-on like house window looking setup with all these different lines and things. Other ones just have two panes in the front and then a big open rear. And that's actually what I ended up going for. But anyway, I did the windows on the front of the cab, the side of the cab, and then I grabbed the headlight color and everything to do a headlight. So copying off of other textures I actually really enjoy doing, because it means that my trains and things match. They look like they all belong together. They have the same color windows. They've got the same design and style of headlight. It makes sure all the colors and things are consistent. They all look good, whatever. But anyway, I'm going through. I've got the wheels, the holes in the wheels for the Skylines drivers. I feel like they're a little too small, so I add a couple effects. Try to get like a slight glow to make it look like a shine on the corners of these. Just like it's a little funky. The game doesn't love bump maps, or at least like compresses them a lot, so you get a lot of weird, ugly noise. So I'm trying to kind of fake a lot of the shine. I bake a lot of the lighting and things in. And then I go and add some shadows and things. The actual driving wheels are slightly bowed, or not bowed, but like curved out in the middle. They're more bulbous in the center than around the edge. So I add a quick shadow to try and emulate that. And then I get really kind of down and dirty with the gradient tool to try and make like a flange looking thing. To save tries, instead of actually modeling flanges on, I just kind of do a diagonal piece. So it means it just takes a little bit of time and effort in the texture process. So now I'm actually going through with a light color set to the overlay blending mode with a drop shadow and an inner glow to be shine for raised detail. And for that, I get started pretty quickly and straightforwardly by just tracing out the edges of all the running gear, all the connecting rods and things, and trying to make it look really nice, I guess. I find that adding these details along the edges of meshes and things adds a lot to them. You can see right there, it just kind of really distracts you from the fact that it's just basically a cube with slightly hexagonal ends. I'm going here and tweaking the colors, just making sure everything works out as well as I'd hoped. And then I start adding some circles and copying them in. These are going to be kind of my imaginary mounting points. And from there, the connecting rods are pretty much done. So now I begin working on I guess it's not really a cowcatcher, but the prow, the bow of the locomotive. It does look a little nautical. And I go through again with the raised detail piece I have to try to get the sides looking right. And then quickly I move on to the boiler, because I'm in kind of a raised detail kick right now. I found a really good reference picture of a model And that showed that the real deal had these seams basically running vertically down the boiler. So those were very important for me to try and recreate. So I go through there, I copied the exact same seams down to the Skyline casing, and of course they are totally off. I really only focused on really good UV mapping on my last few train projects. This one was a little bit older than that. It actually predates some of the commuter trains that have been released for a while, predates the monorail. But just was such a challenging asset to tackle, I always kind of dreaded it. So anyway, I go through here and am adjusting all the seams on the Skyline casing to get them all to line up. My newer models, it's much nicer because they just line up automatically, so it's like a total dream. End up finally kind of getting them all to fit and just saying screw it for the last one, deleting it, and it looks really good. So now I get in down and dirty again with rivets, and these are something I really put off trying to texture for a long time, so I'm like, nobody's ever going to notice, they look so bad. But I forget what models I started it on, but I ended up finding out that like little tiny 1 pixel details, even if they're just like limited, even if it's just like a single row of rivets or like a sharp shadow around something, really kind of show off how beautiful and high res the textures are and how well they're packed and efficient and everything in a way that just like a big blank face can't. So being able to have this stuff really helps. That's why you're seeing a lot of my stuff lately has 1 pixel edges, 1 pixel like rows of 1 pixel rivets and things, because I think it even makes the blank edges, it make it look more intentional in my mind. Instead of just being like, oh, this is blank, it's like this is intentionally left blank because on the real thing it was really smooth. But anyway, right now I'm doing the vents and the holes in the top of the Skyline casing, cutting them down a little bit to fit the angle at the top of the boiler, and just shortening them a little bit because the real things didn't go quite that far back. And now I am working on holes in the top of the locomotive. This one I think was for the whistles, and then there's another one that's some sort of valve and pipe access just at the top of the Skyline casing. Yeah, here's the valve and pipe access thing. I want to try to get top details really good, because even though the reference was super slim, I was really nervous trying to get it all right. Because you see Skylines as a game you view from the top, so I wanted to make sure it was good. The real thing has this weird kind of divot or like recessed area right behind the smokestack. I tried to create that, ended up figuring out that the bow could work if I scaled up my piece there. So we see I bow it around, I kind of tweak it in a position, figure it all out, cut the stack down, realize that it doesn't quite fit in right, cut it down, darken it up, add that inner shadow and that outer glow, clean everything up, and there you go. So now you have that dark little sunken area, which is super nice. So moving on, I go and start adding some detail to the roof of the locomotive. Again, detail on the top I really like, because you see it in game a lot. You might think like the sides most important, but I actually really think the roofs are as important as the sides. Maybe slightly less. But I've been really trying to focus on getting good-looking roof detail, because not everybody plays with first-person camera. Not everybody plays with that stuff. And now I realize that my shaping doesn't quite work out to show off the detail on the roof, and I need to kind of cheat and modify my design from the original. So I kind of add this sort of thing, which is definitely a compromise, and I still think a little weird, and kind of almost antithetical to the whole super streamlined, smooth look. But, well, I mean, I kept it, so I think it ends up looking fine. It's just like a little... It's almost like a broken nose it reminds me of. Just like a little nose with a bend in it. But, whatever. I think it's fine. I don't think anybody would notice. And even though I'm painting on individual rivets and things, I'm not meaning for these models to be exact. Unfortunately, I don't really have the time to do that. Or the interest, as weird as it sounds, as I spend probably about 12-15 hours, maybe a little less, on trying to get this thing to look as accurate and nice as possible. It like almost feels weird to say that like it almost doesn't matter. But here's here, see I'm freestyling some bolts, trying to get some more detail in there. Just because I thought that this panel seams looked a little weird, because that's the only place that it gives me panel seams. But I go through and add a few more panels and hatches and things to different parts of the locomotive, just using the same raised detail layers which come with that drop shadow. Start adding latches and things for different parts. I don't know what these do in real life, what they'd be for, but a bunch of pictures of the model trains that I was using as reference. I had them, so here we go. We get these latches or valves or whatever the heck these are. I originally pasted them in all sections, but then just think, man, this looks a little too busy. Delete them in all but the back two, which I think is a little more prototypical, and then get back to bolts and different like raised areas. So you get one of each on the little horizontal, I think that's like some sort of high pressure tank or something, across the front. And then, here, what do we got to work on next? Some more raised details. I'm going in and actually texturing on the latches for this raised panel, and the hinges at the top. And this is like, it's definitely excess detail. No one's really going to notice, but you can see. So zoom out. I'm clearly looking at some reference images right there, maybe texting on my phone or something. And start kind of realizing that's not a square. Widen that up a little bit. That's the panel that the coupler hid behind. And then I start tracing again in that raised detail thing, trying to polish off the curve a little more. I'm checking back and forth between the model and the texture. Really trying to make it look, well, good. So up here we get some latches on this roof venting, which is nice to see. Continuing on, man, I'm so tired recording this. Oh well. Continuing to add more panels and things, trying to come up with some sort of balance of completely fabricated, made-up detail and like crazy photorealistic detail, because it's hard enough to find the reference, it's hard enough to find everything else, but I really didn't want to fake it, and also didn't really care enough to want to completely do everything super carefully. So I actually ended up going back to the window and totally changing the way I did it. So my usual window technique didn't work on this locomotive, because it has like, my usual window technique comes with things like weather stripping, which is not really existing in the late 30s when this train was built. Oh well. Anyway, I go through, I notice the real thing has some, even the front wheels have these really cool contours and things. They're definitely not just flat discs of metal. So I go through with a bunch of blending options and things, and a gradient fill, I think. And so a really kind of complicated, like 8-10 stop gradient or something crazy, and try to get this working. So you can see right here, I'm just like flipping through blending modes, flipping through different colors and things, trying to figure out a good way to bring out the highlights, bring out the shadows without being too blatant, without it looking like I just textured and painted a target onto these wheels. I think I ended up doing a pretty good job, and with the bump maps, it looks pretty phenomenal. I guess normal maps. But anyway, now I was saying that I've started doing rivets before, and well, the Dreyfuss is no exception. So I start copying and pasting with Photoshop a line of rivets. These are just light painted little single pixels. I think they have a small, like a teeny tiny little drop shadow. They get added onto the bump map, which is nice, so they get lit nicely and kind of catch light and play with stuff in interesting and amusing ways. So I let out a long kind of seam of these and then realized it's slightly the wrong dimension to be able to fit around the seams on the boiler. So I ended up having to scrap all of it and change it again. Now I started adding a few pipes to the boiler. So I have a couple pipes and handrails and things modeled on the locomotive, but I didn't want to do all of it because the try count was already getting high. I think it was around 4,000, which is about double most of my diesel locomotives, maybe a little less than for like the electrics that have all the catenary stuff at the top. But just like the running gear really burned me. The number of wheels burned me a lot because those are very, very expensive to figure out. And obviously the huge curved boiler was like, oh great, it's gonna be just like Tri-City here. So anyway, I ended up painting on these pipes and things, and I'm like a little reluctant to think that it's gonna look good at first, but with a handful of detail, I actually end up super happy with how these turn out. So I start adding just little pieces of texture that would be annoyingly difficult to model and would require these tiny little meshes. But what I do here is I'm texturing on like the posts, I guess, that hold these pipes onto the boiler. So a little thing at the end with like turn screws or something. I think a couple of these posts have those same sort of T-shapes on the end as well. And it ended up looking really good. Obviously, it's not a full-on other model, but I think it's close enough. So these are the builder's plates. I was really excited to make these and figure out kind of what to do with them. I ended up putting them in a slightly unprototypical location just because where I put the little pipe bend and everything was too tight to try to make this look big enough. Couple layer styles, and then I kind of fake paint some text on. I like go back and forth between fake painting this sort of text on and actually like typing stuff out and shrinking it way down. But this one ended up fake. And of course, now that I have had my nice break and do something interesting, it's back to doing hinges on every panel and like door handles and things. Which, well, whatever. They need them. So now I realized that the locomotive needs some text. I quickly find some empty space. This is a technique I use all the time to let me have more efficient unwraps. So I use these, like I make billboards out of single planes and use those as the separate meshes, separate non-manifold geometry that I move into the right place, have it floating just like slightly off the front of the, or off the actual polygon itself. Color the background in the exact same color, or alpha map it out, though I've been trying to use the background technique more and more lately, because it's a little lighter on the programming and less buggy. But I ended up adding a number to the locomotive on the cab, and using this big spot here to make a Gramercy Central logo. And originally I'm thinking, like, you know what, we could try making it a little unique. Obviously it'll be inspired by the New York Central one, New York Central system versus Gramercy Central system. But I ended up saying, like, screw it. The New York Central logo is pretty iconic, and it felt wrong to add anything to the nose of this Dreyfuss. So other than a quick and dirty little text change from New York to Gramercy, I pretty much try to emulate it like reasonably closely. There's some stuff like the C in Central eats the E in Central in real life. I try to just kind of fudge that by making the caps a little larger. So my first go, I make a quick cylinder. It's got a nice like sans serif font. Texture the cylinder real quick to it, squeeze it into the correct shape and everything. Snap it to the front of this locomotive, shrink it all down, stretch it all out, and start working on peeling this and making it fit around the edge of the locomotive. So I originally placed it there. I think I ended up changing that because it felt a little too high. I think I brought it down a little lower. And then I start working on trying to figure out how to fold this thing, how to get it to look like it form fits around the very round, very gentle, I guess, Cowcatcher, the front piece of this train. So I ended up taking a couple tries to make sure that I didn't miss anything on any sort of selection, and didn't screw anything up in terms of like the direction I push it in. So it starts out as a billboard that's totally flat, just an oval-shaped billboard floating in front of this round train, but obviously that won't do. So I go through and start pushing down individual vertices, well, vertices in groups of 4, and end up having this thing look great. And it's about now, yeah, I quickly add in the background and make sure there's no seam. I think it looks good. And then I start looking for an alternate font. There are a few that I like, a few that I can like pause on and be like, maybe. But I actually end up finding a pretty accurate, or at least pretty potentially accurate, serif font, nice and bold. This one feels about right. And I kind of start tweaking the whole logo and everything to try and get it looking good. Up the size a little bit, and there we go on the logo. So we're actually getting pretty close to done with this texture here. It feels weird to say it because after I finished recording, I ended up adding a whole bunch. I did the entire tender texture off camera, which was thank God a lot simpler, but still came with its own like unique sort of set of challenges. The UV unwrap also wasn't really good, so I had to modify that a little bit. Add a quick little centerpiece to these driving wheels just because I feel like they were maybe missing something. Turns out, yep, they were. And then the last kind of big piece to tackle is the trailing truck here. So a little bit, I just try to kind of freestyle it before I realize, wait a minute, I've got side reference. I can use that. It's like the top and bottom stuff is what I have to do reference free. So I line up my reference. Geez, I am getting really tired now. But yeah, I line up my reference and start stretching and squishing shapes around using photos, using photos of models. and this reference, I almost said reference footage, jeez. This reference drawing, reference CAD drawing to figure out where these details go. And I mean, it's definitely based off of somebody else's work here, but I feel like I can trust them well enough at least to be accurate. So we'll see. I did end up actually, one of my first trains, my first train actually, the American bi-level, the original American commuter train, I think that's now called the Classic Gallery or something like that. But that actually has a mistake because I used my primary source for reference was a Kato bi-level car decorated for Caltrain. That actually turns out it was originally a Metra, like from Chicago, painted car. So it's got the signboards and things in the Metra location and ones in the Caltrain location, so that are added because they're on the opposite sides of the car. But anyway, I'm totally like rambling and everything as I do this trailing truck. But I ended up basing these off of these cars that have twice the amount of big flat spots in the paint or in the fluting. So I actually end up baking some errors into my models in that way. Anyway, I go through and I'm now adding some like super fine detail onto just some like generic parts, some generic cubes and things I added to fill space to block people's view. These obviously are like nothing, they're like almost computer chippy. But they're just like generic sort of steam plumbing and valves and things. I go through again with the raised detail and try to trace around certain shapes and things just to make them look, you know, interesting before moving on. And just checking the last few things. I'm super proud of the way that rear truck turned out. And then actually, that's kind of the last it is. So this part's now, I'm not really doing a live action section because that was going to be this. But this video is actually getting super long already, so I threw out my audio. It's sped up now as well. I think just a little bit less. I think this is now sped up 400% rather than 600%. But I go through and I'm super happy with the way this thing turned out. I think it's an amazing sort of piece for the park. I think it looks right, it matches the game, etc. For right now, it's going to be a prop and just for me. But I am slowly working on a set of cars for this thing. And once a full set of cars is out, I am going to release it as a train, a full-on Gramercy Central 20th Century Limited or whatever. We'll have to come up with another name for it. But we'll see. So I originally placed it on the ground, put it in an enclosure, and then think, you know, maybe I could put it up on a plinth. That wouldn't be so hard. What did I've seen people do all these things? But man, that ended up being a huge headache. So I grabbed ploppable asphalt because that's a great way to do, well, plinths now. And I kind of move everything into place, try to figure it all out. Raise and lower the track, raise and lower the train, adjust what's there, delete the locomotive, go, I have to find it again. Place it, move it back into position, everything, get it all lined up, all stuck in the right way. You can get a really nice shot of the tender there. But kind of keep going. I ended up looking for walls and things. The walls I wanted, of course, couldn't be shrunk into the ground. Or the original walls I wanted, anyway. So I'm scanning through all my walls, being like, please, please, please give me something that I can cram inside the ground. Some low wall, something like that, because this prefab wall just was like too high, because it needs to be raised up so people could see this train, but not too far, because then nobody would be able to see the train. So I ended up deleting all that and kind of starting from scratch with these shorter walls. They have that ugly orange top, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I actually managed to cover that with the ploppable asphalt, so that was extremely nice, actually. But I start from scratch, which is like a little frustrating, but definitely got to keep what I learned and make it good, I guess. So I grabbed these walls. I think I started off looking at the brick. I think I'm using the concrete here. I drag out a rectangle, try to make sure it looks good. I find a new fence I like a little bit better. Obviously, in real life, these are fenced off. You can't touch these trains and things. So kept it fenced off like I'd imagine it would be, like I'd imagine a historical locomotive would be. Well, at least one stored out in the open, in the elements. We can pretend that they put up like a tent or something over it. Obviously, it's too hard to be able to move for the winter because it's not connected to any track. But anyway, I spent a lot of time trying to make sure all these corners and things are lined up. I actually teleport the whole fence over here with move it because I don't feel like it's lined up, because this is the closest 90-degree corner. And spoiler alert, it is lined up. I'm actually better than I thought at this, I guess. But I end up using this time where I've got all the grid lines and things to very quickly make a full box and move it around, and just like that. Place it around equidistant from all sides, really nice and organized. Grab my curb props, grab my HUDs and Locomotive. I'm using the curbs instead of actual tracks because I didn't want the big buffers at each end. So Ronix's curb prop is actually filling in as steel rails right here, and I think they're doing a fine job. Now, of course, I say steel rails, I realize I totally have those I-beams that I could have used. But whatever. The steel, jeez. The curb props are pretty much exactly what I want. So anyway, we're actually coming to the end of this video now. We only have a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to start wrapping things up as you see me kind of finishing off this podium, this pavilion for the train, and very promptly kind of quickly trying to decorate the area and realizing that it just doesn't make sense for such a cool exhibit to be far away from the center of the park, especially now, because I kind of imagine this has been in city custody, I guess, the train has been, for maybe like 7, 10, maybe 15 years or something like that. So I figured that it's maybe not the most well restored. It's obviously not in operating condition. So there's a little bit of rust and things on the texture. But I ended up putting it in the center. You can see now that it feels crazy that it was over a month ago that I first built this and asked General to give me a shot with a rotating atom model. He did a fantastic job. It's a little small for what I imagined, so and of course I like using my own assets too, so it's possible that I'll come up with something to replace it with, but right now it just looks so cool in there, spinning away. So I moved the train up to the very front of the, I almost said for the parade of the park, surround its enclosure with concrete, making good care to leave the enclosure itself bare, so I'm not using the surface painter brushes. Then I grab orange and yellow flowers and white flowers, and I'm not 100% sold in this pattern, but I like the orange and white. I think it matches what I imagine the city colors are, which of course are the same as New York, so orange, blue, and white, and throw in some grass. And well, that's it. So I should be seeing it now just as we kind of start the outro short cinematic. And anyway, that's about it. So I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it all the way this far. It's been a bit of a crazy episode because I wanted to cram all this stuff in here. So anyway, I really hope to be back on schedule soon. And by soon, I mean hopefully this coming weekend. I'll be posting weekly again. It's crazy that this is only episode 8. Like I looked, I'm like, I'm sure I missed something, but I didn't. Anyway, that's about it. I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching. Please follow me on Twitter for better updates and things. I've come so close. I really want to keep that Hudson as a surprise, but I've come extremely close to just posting about it. Anyway, it's been on streams and things, and I'm super happy. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to see more stuff and be notified when the next episode comes out. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.